I taught my kids Fuṣḥā Arabic in America. I'm not an Arab. I was raised here. There was no Arabic speaking environment waiting for them. And the first time that this could even work took 3 weeks. Not 3 weeks to fluency, 3 weeks for one tiny phrase to come back. So in this video, I want to cover 2 things. First, the story of how it actually happened, why I chose Fuṣḥā, what made the beginning so hard, and the one principle that made the whole thing work. And second, the 10 benefits that came from it. Not just for my kids, but for me, my family, and the way I now think about teaching Arabic. And the surprising part is this: I thought that I was teaching my kids Arabic. But in many ways, Arabic was actually teaching all of us. And if this is the kind of practical Arabic story that you guys want more of, subscribe, because I'm building this in public. Let me start in 2019, the year my daughter was born. By that time, I could already speak Arabic decently well, but most of my Arabic lived in one narrow world: formal study and religious topics. Because that was the doorway that pulled me into Arabic. I had memorized the Quran, which is the central scripture of Islam, all while not understanding a single word inside. That made me want to understand Arabic seriously, but I didn't want to just get by. I didn't want Arabic to be something that I could only use in a classroom or in a narrow formal setting. I wanted to travel in Arab lands, understand the people, follow Arabic news, and talk naturally in real situations. I wanted to live in it. I wanted to hold a real conversation, give a speech, express myself naturally, and eventually even think in Arabic. And when I say I wanted proper Arabic, I don't mean a dialect. I wanted Fuṣḥā, the clear and formal Arabic that's understood in every Arab country. Lets you understand books, speeches, the news, public life, and also texts like the Quran. But there was one problem: I had no environment. I was in America. I had created a makeshift environment for myself while studying. I would speak Arabic with teachers and classmates whenever I could. I would ask Arab friends again and again how to say different things. And every real conversation made the language feel less like a subject and more like a door into people. But scattered practice is an immersion, and I knew it wasn't enough. At that time, I had settled back in my home city and returned to my software engineering job. I didn't want to lose what I had built. I wanted Arabic to stay alive in me. For the first 2 years of my daughter's life, I barely did anything serious with her Arabic. Maybe 1 or 2 half-hearted attempts to teach her a few words. But then in 2021, the day my son was born, I made a solid decision that from today, I speak to my daughter only in Arabic. She was about 2 years old, right under it, and she was right at the edge of putting her first real sentences together. So I wasn't only teaching her Arabic, I was actually layering Arabic on top of the fact that she was still learning how to speak at all. That made everything slower, and the beginning was really brutal. The first word or phrase that I tried to teach her took quite some time. I would say it again and again. Nothing. 1 day, 3 days, a week, 2 weeks, still nothing. And from her side, I understand it. Her father had suddenly started speaking to her in another language. But 3 weeks in, she finally said it back. Something tiny, like, كيف حالك? How are you? That one moment lit a fire under me, because now I knew that this can work. So I kept going. At first, every new word had about a 3-week delay. 3 weeks of input, then eventually it would surface in her speech. But then 3 weeks became 2.5 weeks as she grew, then 2, then less. The sharper she became, the faster the language came. But there was another challenge. I felt self-conscious. People could hear me speaking Arabic to a toddler, and early on it felt a bit ridiculous, to be honest. Then people started warning me, you're gonna confuse her. She's not gonna separate the languages. She speaks Urdu with her mother and Arabic with you. And anyway, this is America. She's never gonna hold on to it. I didn't argue. I just kept going. And within about 6 months to a year, she was fully conversational. She was speaking freely, and she was curious. So she would ask question after question. And because of that natural father-daughter closeness, she just wanted to talk to me all the time. By age 4, I was telling her the story of Sulaiman, known in English as Solomon, from the Quran, and she was actually following it. No, not just sitting there, following, like asking real questions. That was when I realized something else. I didn't want to be her only source of Arabic. My Arabic was strong, but I wasn't yet speaking like a native speaker. I was still building everyday vocabulary myself. So I wanted her ear trained by native speakers as well. But that created a tension. Native speakers often mix registers. they use Fusḥā. They also bring in Ammiya, which means the everyday spoken dialect. So if I opened the door to outside input, the Arabic would naturally include some dialect or some imperfect grammar. So I had to make a decision. And I had to be practical. Something is better than nothing. Comfort and fluency were the first goal. The fine sorting could come later. So when I traveled for short periods to study in places like Turkey and Jordan, I would enroll her in local Arabic schools for like a month. I did this a couple of times. At my request, they tried to speak to her mostly in Fusḥā, because she didn't follow the local dialect anyways. It was still a mixed environment, but it helped. I also added some private classes, and some of these sources naturally included a little dialect or imperfect Fusḥā. And that's where my main principle came in. I separated vocabulary from grammar. Vocab could come from everywhere, from me, from teachers, from TV, from travel, from any useful source. TV was actually helpful because a lot of children's Arabic content uses rich Fusḥā vocab and fairly clean grammar. But grammar was different. Grammar came from me, and I was strict about it. If she made a mistake in nahu or sarf, I would correct it within seconds. Nahu means grammar and sentence structure, and sarf means morphology and conjugation. I didn't correct harshly, but I corrected, and consistently. That became the engine. Open everywhere on vocab, but airtight on grammar. And the years did their work. Today, because of that, she's fluent completely. And because of that constant correction, her grammar is extremely strong too. She speaks Urdu with her mother without any confusion, English at school, and she even understands a fourth language with her grandparents, even if she doesn't speak it as frequently. Then came the bonus that I didn't expect. She was the first, but after her, my two sons absorbed Arabic much more easily because the environment already existed. They grew up around me speaking Arabic. They grew up around her speaking Arabic. So they became fluent naturally. And this is where I want to pause for a second. Because if you're watching this and thinking, I wish that Arabic felt more alive for me, then ask yourself this. What would change if Arabic stopped being something you studied alone and started becoming something you practiced with real people? A course can teach you information, but a real environment makes the language feel normal. This is what I'm trying to create in my Arabic community. Free weekly Arabic speaking sessions with me, real people, and a clear path so Arabic doesn't stay trapped in your notes. If that's something that you want, the link's in the description. And if this kind of practical Arabic story is useful, then like the video and subscribe, because I'm going to keep showing how Arabic becomes real in a life, not just impressive on paper. But first, let me show you what this gave us, because the benefits went far beyond my kids and speaking Arabic. So here are the 10 benefits that I got from teaching my kids Arabic. Benefit number 1. It forced me to build my own Arabic. I thought I knew Arabic. Then I tried to live in Arabic all day with a child, and I discovered how many everyday words I was missing. Household nouns, ordinary verbs, tiny specific words you never need until you're narrating real life to a toddler. So every time I hit a gap, I ran a process. First, I would look for a classical Fusḥā word using sources like Lane's lexicon. But Lane's is a classical dictionary, so for many modern household items, it simply didn't have what I needed. Then I would fall back on modern standard Arabic sources. And this was before AI, so I used sources like Hansware, Google Translate, plain Google searches, and sometimes even Google Images to confirm that the word meant the exact object that I wanted. If I had doubt, I asked someone. If I was confident, I locked it in and I started using it with her. But I kept a mental flag on it. Then later, if I found a better classical word in my own readings, I would swap it in. If I found multiple words for the same thing, I would teach her and expose her to all of them. And that was just nouns. Verbs were harder, because verbs are harder to search for. Today, AI actually makes this much easier. Back then, it was real work. Number 2, my kids actually speak Arabic. That alone is enormous. Arabic is the language I chased for years. At first, even after memorizing long passages of Arabic for religious study, I still couldn't understand the language the way I wanted. I had to spend years studying before Arabic began opening up to me in conversation, reading, travel, and everyday life. But my kids got it like a first language. They didn't have any struggle, no years of waiting, no difficulty. Number 3, they absorbed sarf and nahu naturally. Anyone who studied Arabic grammar knows that wall. At 12, 13, 15, or even older, you start climbing this grammar-first mountain. But my kids skip that wall. They speak with correct patterns before knowing the formal rules. So when they study grammar later, they'll mostly be learning why they already speak correctly. That's a completely different experience from memorizing rules and forcing your mouth to obey them. Number 4, my wife picked it up just by listening. She does not formally know Arabic, but when Arabic is running through the house every day, you absorb things. Now she understands nearly everything that we say at home. My parents became more interested too. My father already had some basic Arabic, and this deepened it. But my wife gained the most simply by living around it constantly. Number 5, Arabic gave me a new bond with my kids. This one might sound strange, but it matters. When you raise children in your native language, you inherit emotional patterns. Your parents spoke to you in a certain way, their parents spoke to them in a certain way, and without realizing it, you pass some of that down. There is good in that, but there are also things that you wish you could express, and somehow they don't come out naturally in your inherited language. With Arabic, I had no inherited pattern, no baggage, no awkwardness. I got to build the emotional tone from scratch. For example, in English, I wasn't in the habit of constantly making dua for my kids out loud. Dua means personal prayer. But in Arabic, it felt natural. Warm little phrases, personal prayers, affectionate exchanges. It became part of the language between us. And that made my relationship with them more expressive and more affectionate in a way that I'm not sure that I otherwise would have had. Number 6, the ideas inside Arabic landed faster and deeper. And if you're not Muslim, the point here is simple. When a child learns a tradition's language early, the ideas inside that tradition stop feeling distant. For us, because my kids had a foundation in Fuṣḥā, Islamic stories and concepts landed quickly. My daughter especially understood Quranic stories fast when I simplified them for her. And the most interesting part is that she absorbed those ideas directly in Arabic. So when she retells a story, she naturally reaches for Arabic words connected to the original source. Not because she memorized it that way, but because that's the language she heard the story in. If you hear the story of Solomon in English, then you'll retell it in English. She heard it in Arabic, so it comes back out in Arabic. Number 7, learning Arabic never depended on their personal interest. If I waited until they were older, then everything would depend on their personal motivation, whether they wanted to learn Arabic. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. And if a teenager says that, hey, Arabic is too hard, the grammar's too much, then that's it. Then it's not going to be easy to teach them. I wanted this done in their early years. Because when a child acquires a language naturally, it doesn't depend on motivation in the same way. There's no opting in or opting out. It's just life. Number 8, I got the best students I could ask for. I always wanted to teach, and my children became the most invested students imaginable. They ask questions constantly, they push me, they pull me out of my comfort zone, and they force me to keep learning. Knowledge grows when you give it, but you need someone to give it to. For many people who study deeply, finding serious students can be difficult. Mine were at home from day one. Because they had spoken Arabic early, I could teach them before they even read. Before alif, ba, ta, the first letters of the Arabic alphabet, before formal books, before years of grammar. For our family, I could teach them stories from the Quran, lessons from the hadith, even basic ideas from fiqh and usul al-hadith. Fiqh is Islamic legal reasoning. Usul al-hadith is the study of how scholars evaluate transmitted reports. Normally, this path is long. First reading, then comprehension, then sarf, nahu, balagha, and adab. Balagha means rhetoric and eloquence. Adab means literature and refined language. Only after years do many students open deeper books. With them, I could skip a lot of that on-ramp. Number 9, for deeper study later, this can save years. Again, if you're not Muslim, think of this as the academic benefit of learning the source language early. For anyone who wants to study Arabic-based texts seriously, whether religious texts, literature, or formal writing, the first few years are often just language. 3 or 4 years can just disappear getting comfortable with the language. Even in a 6 or 7 year program, which is a traditional seminary curriculum, students are still improving their Arabic throughout. But if Arabic is already alive at home, specifically Fuṣḥā, the sequence changes. If sarf, nahu, and balagha are also built early, then much of the remaining formal study can compress. In that case, something that normally takes 6 or 7 years could realistically become much shorter, maybe around 2 or 3 focused years for what remains. And finally, number 10. It positions them to excel in both deeper Arabic study and regular school life. Now that's the big picture. If children have Arabic early, then any deeper study later becomes easier, including Islamic studies for families who care about that, meaning deeper Islamic studies, while still leaving room for school, career skills, and the rest of life. They can have both. That's the point. So that's the full story. I taught my kids Fuṣḥā Arabic in America without being an Arab, without a ready-made Arabic environment, and without waiting for perfect conditions. The method was simple, but it wasn't easy. I created the environment, I stayed consistent, and I allowed vocabulary from many places, but I protected the grammar. And over time, Arabic became normal in the house. That's why I care so much about teaching Arabic as something alive, not just a subject, not just grammar on paper, a language you can use, hear, feel, and build a life around. And if you want to start experiencing Arabic in that way too, the next step is simple. Come practice with me every week inside my Arabic community. It's not a heavy program. It's a place to make Arabic feel more normal, with structure, guidance, and other people walking the same path. For now, I'm opening these weekly practice sessions for free for a limited time. So if you're asking, what would it look like for Arabic to become normal for me too, you can join through the link in the description. And if this story helped you see Arabic differently, then like the video and subscribe, because I'm gonna keep building this path in public. Thank you for watching.